A little girl was unearthed after 100 years, and they were shocked by what they saw. Loretta was a girl who, from birth, symbolized a miracle for her parents, and they considered her a true angel. Her parents had struggled for years to conceive, and had long since resigned themselves to being childless, as doctors told them they were both infertile. Their only chance was to become adoptive parents. Simon and Lucia dreamed so much of raising a little one, watching him grow up and guiding him through life, that when they learned that they definitely could not conceive a child of their own, they decided to adopt. They had the economic conditions to give a child a good upbringing and education, and that is why they were willing to give as much love to other children as if it were their own. Thus, their first child came into their lives, a boy who had been abandoned by his parents when he was only 4 months old. He was extremely thin, and the adoption agency did not know what to do with him because he was not the type of child that people were looking for, since they always asked for handsome, white, blue-eyed children with a healthy build. But this boy was not like that, and that was precisely what Simon and Lucia fell in love with. They knew that if it wasn't them, hardly anyone else would give him a chance. When they arrived home with the baby in their arms, they felt happier than ever. A new life was about to begin for them, and they were determined that their son would be fully happy, and that he would never lack anything, neither materially nor emotionally. And so the three of them became a beautiful family, in which love was always in the air. And very soon the child was healthy and strong like everyone else, and every day he grew more and more. 5 years later, their son was already taller than all his schoolmates, and was strong like none of them. Simon and Lucia were proud of him, because although his presence was imposing, their son was the sweetest and most tender child imaginable. He had such a noble heart that there was no one who did not love him, and all his classmates looked to him for protection when they felt that another child wanted to bother them. Simon and Lucia knew they were doing a good job raising him, and had long since left behind the sadness of not being able to have a child of their own. It was then that, without expecting it, their doctor told them that against all odds, Lucia was pregnant, and it was a girl on the way. They both believed that after being declared infertile, a pregnancy, even at the age of 35, could be risky for Lucia. But they were wrong. The baby was developing completely healthy and normal, and the mother was strong and prepared for the management and delivery. So it was at that moment that they thought the child was an angel and a miracle, because not even the doctors had the explanation for it. When they told their son that he would have a baby sister, he immediately took on the role of protector several months before she was born. When he was at home, he was always looking after his mother and everything she needed, and not a day went by that he did not hug her belly as if he was telling his little sister that he would always be there to protect her. Simon and Lucia felt that after several years of suffering, blessings had come into their lives. Their 2 children were their greatest treasures, and there was nothing for which they could be more grateful. And when the baby girl was born, they were all amazed. Not only was she a healthy child, but she possessed a beauty that seemed otherworldly. Her eyes were deep blue, her features and proportions were perfect, and it was already apparent that she would soon have beautiful hair. The girl cried only when the doctor cut the umbilical cord, but afterwards she was so peaceful and serene that everyone believed that this girl was not like the others, that she was not just another inhabitant of the planet, and that she was surely destined for great things in life. And Loretta did something amazing every day. She seemed to be ahead of her time, as if she already came with a well-learned instruction manual on life. And instead of learning from her parents and older brother, she was here to teach them. By her first birthday, she had long, full hair, and her skin was almost translucent. Her eyes were still as blue as on the first day, but her gaze, on the other hand, was no longer that of a child, but of a grown woman, and he knew that she made others feel intimidated when she looked at them. He was convinced that the girl was capable of seeing the soul and the future. Those thoughts were reinforced as time went on, and as many people felt afraid of themselves and what others might see in them, they began to avoid Loretta. Adults did not feel comfortable with her, but on the other hand, children adored her. Along with what had happened to her older brother, children her age looked to her for protection, but also for advice, for although her vocabulary was still narrow, she seemed to have an answer for everyone. Her parents were the only adults who were not intimidated by her. They adored her madly. Her brother, who had thought he would be her protector, realized that even though his little sister was 6 years younger than him, she was capable of taking care of herself, as well as taking care of everyone there. She seemed to have lived many lives, and to have stored the experiences of all of them, so that she always knew how to act in any circumstance. Before she was 4 years old, Loretta began to write. Her notes were perfectly legible despite her young age, and she managed to capture complete ideas without much difficulty. Almost all of them were thoughts about childhood, about children in the world, and the way they are treated by others, written in such a simple and natural way that they could be understood by everyone. But at the same time, they were astonishing for their depth, even more so when written by a 4-year-old girl. Loretta was always at peace. Nothing made her angry, and her example calmed everyone down. She always had a smile on her face and a word of encouragement. Together with her, her parents and siblings felt calm, full, and secure. But what they felt was so much more, and it was inexplicable. That's why she was their angel. For them, Loretta was a version of heaven. So when she became ill at 5 years old, they grieved not only because they might lose a child and a sister, but because they would no longer have that little piece of heaven on earth. Without Loretta, the world would go back to what it had been before, without that breath of divinity. But they soon learned that there was nothing to be done for her, and Loretta soon died. However, even during her last breath, the girl was not disturbed. She went calmly, and her inert body still reflected that peace. She was buried in the family vault. Simon and Lucia had always imagined that they would get there first, and they were devastated. Their son was also inconsolable. But Loretta, from heaven, continued to transmit her calmness, and the prospect that, sooner or later, he would be reunited with her, finding his calmness again. But they could never forget or stop missing her. Loretta had been buried with her notes, which was too painful a memory. Her brother took it upon himself to tell his children and grandchildren all about her, and so they all grew up feeling they knew her. But it wasn't until 100 years after her death that one of her granddaughters felt so close to Loretta that she wanted to know her notes, even though she was sure that after 100 years she would only find dust. But when they opened the coffin, the notes were intact. But not only that, Loretta's body was also gone. She didn't seem to have been dead for 100 years, but just one day. She wished that her grandfather and his parents, Simon and Lucia, had been able to see her, but she was sure that the four of them had finally been reunited again and were watching over them all from heaven. However, the news did not go unnoticed, and her body was taken to a funeral museum, where it still is. The notes, on the other hand, disappeared, but then traveled the world in the form of an anonymous book, and Loretta's wisdom was never lost. If you liked this story, give it a like, share it with your friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'm Max, and I'll see you in the next story.